There used to be a consensus that humans really do have paranormal abilities, whether it be clairvoyance, making physical images using only their mind, or remote viewing. One ability that came under study in 1993 goes into detail about how individuals, such as Zhao Baosheng, have the ability to move objects through others. This is the paranormal ability of breaking spatial barriers. With a total of 25 different tests, let's review what was covered and what the results were. Let's review the research into the paranormal ability to break through spatial barriers by Song Kangzi, Li Zhenggao, and Zhao Baosheng, declassified in a CIA document in August 11th, 2000. The 1980s and 1990s were a very interesting time in China. China showed a significant institutional interest in paranormal research during this time, especially through state-backed scientific and military organizations. Organizations such as the Institute of Space Medico Engineering, Beijing College of Aeronautics, and even the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, were involved in testing individuals with extraordinary human functions. These paranormal abilities included remote viewing, telekinesis, telepathy, and the object teleportation, which were viewed as possible tools for intelligence or defense. The 1980s to the early 1990s saw national media coverage and televised demonstrations of so-called gifted children and Qigong masters. Qigong fever swept the country, mixing traditional practices with claims of supernatural powers. Experiments like those documented in the CIA files, which we are covering today, right now, were conducted under controlled conditions, sometimes with high-speed cameras and scientific advisors present. What's very interesting here is that this paper was backed and had collaborators from the Institute of Space Medico Engineering in Beijing, the Shanghai Institute of Atomic Nuclear Research, the China Institute of Atomic Energy, and headed by the Beijing College of Aeronautics. In this paper, Liu Shuheng, Zhao Binghuang, and 17 others conducted 25 experiments on individuals who had the inert ability to break spatial barriers. Let's dive into this declassified document and let's cover the more interesting experiments and their outcomes. For tests including sample 1, they used sealed, transparent glass bottles. These bottles were 4 centimeters in diameter and 12 to 13 centimeters long. With these bottles, 30 medicine tablets were placed, each being colored either red, green, or purple. The tablets were 5.5 millimeters in diameter and 3 millimeters thick. Different ratios of the numbers of different colored pills were placed in the different bottles, each bottle being numbered individually. The numbers of each different colored tablet, the number of sample, and the serial number of the sample bottle, all marked on the test labels using a binary system. Those tablets were placed within the bottles, then the tops of each bottle were heated and closed to a small slit. According to the paper, even if the tablets were to be broken in half, there'd be no way in which they could be poured out. Each sample was one of the kind, and for them to not be duplicated. The glass bottles were not rebuilt if broken, and the glass made transparent for observation. 2 of the bottles used in the subsequent experiments using these samples had successes. During both experiments, the phenomenon of removal of one half a tablet occurred, Apparently, the subject, when using his abilities, was able to shake most of the bottles without touching them. The two successes were cases where the tablet only made it halfway out of the bottle, breaking the tablet in half both times. When counting, tablets inside and outside the bottles remained the same. Not only did all 30 tablets remain, by counting their colors and number of color, they confirmed no new tablets were added or removed. In fact, 2 tablets almost fully phased out of 2 bottles. These first initial examples, these tests, using these samples that I described earlier, were pretty much a success. According to the paper, 2 tablets almost fully phased out of the bottles. They didn't make it all the way, they broke in half, but parts of the tablets, in 2 different cases, did make it out of the bottle. So far, we've had individuals with the ability to at least take partial pieces of these medicinal tablets out of bottles, almost completely sealed bottles. Other subsequent tests used the same type of sealed transparent test bottle as used in sample 1. However, inside the bottle was placed 15 plexiglass pieces which were red, yellow, and green. No medicinal tablets. Each test piece was 5 by 5 by 1.5 millimeter squares. Different test sample bottles contained different ratios of the different colored test pieces. Not only that, each had a Russian letter on each test piece. The 15 Russian letters altogether formed 3 Russian words, where each color had a separate word. So for example, 4 pieces of plexiglass in a given bottle would have the Soviet letters S, O, D, and A. Soda, with different colors. Each bottle had different colored pieces of plexiglass. Just as in sample 1, the glass was placed inside the tops of the bottles, fully through, and the tops were heated and formed into a slit, where the glass wouldn't be able to come out even if broken into pieces. 3 different experiments were conducted with these samples. In these tests, letters D, T, G, and Y were removed from bottle 1, and O, E, E were removed from bottle 2, and D, O, and L were removed from bottle 8. Unlike sample 1, no bottles broke, and the plexiglass containing the letters were fully removed. Unlike the tests which used sample 1, the tests containing sample 4, the subsequent tests after the fact, were more so successful. Unlike the tablets that broke in half and the other bottles that broke in the first initial experiments, in these experiments, they were fully able to remove these objects without breaking the bottle. And remember, even when broken, those little slits, the only way you could pull anything out of these bottles were too small. Nothing would be able to fit through there. Now, after the first 2 sets of tests, we're going further. More subsequent tests use a 500 milliliter clear glass bottle with packets of unexposed photo paper inside. The packet was connected to a 30 centimeter string labeled TIAC. The bottles this time were sealed with a rubber stopper. This time, unlike the previous examples and tests, these bottles were fully sealed. At the time of these tests, other 500 milliliter bottles had Fujian tea bags inside, as well as iron tea strainers with a packet of unexposed photo paper inside as well. They even recorded this one with high-speed camera and captured one of the individuals, those being tested, would take the paper out of the glass bottles the exact moment, without breaking them and leaving everything else in the bottle intact. According to the paper, the results of this group of experiments not only demonstrates that the breakthrough point is the wall of the container, but that the breakthrough of the obstacle occurs in a time sequence. That being said, the object does seem to phase out, maybe at a given point, but it does go through the bottle, and it's actually been able to be captured by video. And going even further, the final example we will cover has a series of experiments that use samples made of custom heated glass tubes, similar of size to the previous samples discussed. These glass tubes were completely sealed closed, custom made for this experiment. One end would have a 1mm hole, however, and within the tube were 1.5 meter length shielded wire, 1mm in diameter. Other samples made the same way would include a metal washer as well as the wire. According to the paper, they videotaped an individual who pinched his fingers together, pinching one end of the wire, causing the shielded wire inside the glass to follow the movements of the individual's fingers. The wire inside would follow the person's fingers on the outside, and the individual was able to move the wire without physically touching it. It was even reported that the person was physically touching the bottle, but not with the fingers specifically doing the motions. Some people were, but others were not even fully touching the bottle with the fingers that were supposedly moving the wire within these glass capsules. And so, in quick summary of these experiments, we saw that through 4 general variations of samples, many experiments were conducted, up to 25 different ones, many times. And every time, they proved a success. Though some more successful than others, each experiment had an individual pull out objects from other physical objects. Each sample was see-through glass, and each contained different objects, were oriented differently, and varied in size for the most part. And we saw individuals in this experiment that were able to pull out other different varying objects from within these bottles right out. What was super interesting in these experiments was that these paranormal ability tests were funded by government departments in China. And not only that, they recorded and taped each experiment I described here. The pictures that come from the paper were from the videos taken by the researchers. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the actual footage, but the pictures used from the paper came directly from that said footage, so at least we have that. They concluded that we can see from the results described above that as one of the paranormal abilities, the ability to break through spatial barriers really exists. The paper tested many individuals but focused on the results of those who were able to actually pass the tests. And interestingly, they considered all 25 tests to be successes. By testing gifted individuals, or as the paper called them, extraordinary function persons, or EFPs, that were able to perform paranormal object transfer, they were able to confirm this ability exists. If the tapes related to these experiments can be found, please let me know. What do you guys think? Is this evidence of inert human abilities? Was the China paranormal craze of the 1980s and 90s just a cultural phase or grounded in some truth? If government agencies thought this held promise, then maybe, just maybe, these abilities should be revisited. But if anything, take a cryptid clue.